We're joined here today with Tech Sergeant William Norman Bill Parker. He served in Company E of the 116th Infantry Regiment, the 29th Division of the U.S. Army. Mr. Parker served during World War II and was involved in the Omaha Beach invasion and was one of the first gentlemen on the beach as part of the 116th Infantry Regiment at around 6:30 in the morning on D-Day on June 6th of 1944. And then he fought all across France, went through Paris, and ended up in the Battle of the Bulge, and ultimately meeting up with the Russians at the Elbe River over in Germany. So, Mr. Parker, I want to welcome you thank you for coming today. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, good deal. And I just, if you could, I understand you're a Choctaw Indian. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Uh,
you could
tell me what it's like growing up as a Choctaw Indian.
well, I grew up at a time when we didn't tell anybody we were Choctaw Indian. That is one thing we had. Our mothers told us that you don't talk about being Indian. It just Indians wasn't thought too much of back then. That is I was born in 1924, so you know about what time of the years it was.
Mm-hmm.
But there was some Indian boys that I run with that she didn't like at all because they got drunk every Saturday night. And I didn't, but Indians wasn't very wild at that time.
Were you full-blooded Choctaw Indian?
No,
No.
no, you could probably drain all the Indian blood out of me and I wouldn't die.
Well, so did you go to an Indian school or anything like that?
No,
Or, okay.
no.
So as you grew up, you were in what part of the country? You lived here in Oklahoma, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what part of Oklahoma did you grow up?
Well, I grew up in LaFleur County, down around Poto was the county seat,
Yep.
and I grew up back in the mountains. I went, if you was on the road to Poto, you'd go through a little place called Shady Point. If you turn west at Shady Point, go 11 mile, cross Brazil Creek, then you'd find our farm.
Okay.
I lived there. That was the last place Dad bought. My grandpa's place was probably 5 or 6 miles on west, in a community called Folsom,
Okay.
named after him. His name was Folsom. And they had a schoolhouse that was named Folsom. And I went to school at Folsom. I went to school at Melton. I went to school in McCurtain. I went to school at Bacosha. I went back to McCurtain. And I had already been to school in Elmore City, so I had a lot of schooling. But anyway, that was the communities I was raised in, Melton, McCurtain, and Bacosha,
Okay.
and all of them mountains around there. Anywhere that I could get a horseback and back in the day, why, I've been there.
Uh-huh. So did your parents speak Choctaw?
No,
No. Okay.
no.
And were you, since you had Indian blood, were you ever discriminated against, or was there? You mentioned not saying, letting people know that you were Choctaw, but was there any issues there? Or
No, I never was.
okay,
Well, nearly everybody in the Florida County had a little Choctaw blood.
sure,
Uh, no, that wasn't.
okay,
I don't think the Indians at that time it was recognized, and probably somebody didn't think much of them, but mostly why we accepted them just fine.
Mm-hmm. So, what part of your family did it come from? Your mother's side or your father's side?
Come from my mother's side.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. And was
yeah.
she uh, full-blooded Choctaw or?
No, she was either an eighth or a quarter. I don't know exactly how they figured that. I'm an eighth,
Okay.
and I kind of think she's down as an eighth, but I'm not sure of that.
Okay.
But my grandpa did go to Choctaw school, and up in Secaucus, Missouri, somewhere up in there.
Okay.
But anyway, why he was well educated and had a big farm, had a big 2-story house
Mm.
that he'd built himself, and was really, I didn't know it, but I expect he was probably, well, probably had more than most people did in that community at that time,
Yeah.
anyway. I put it that
Just
way.
getting the mic closer to you there.
I didn't, I ain't gonna say nothing good, bad about him, but I don't think he was a very good grandpa.
Oh yeah.
He wasn't a grandpa like I was a grandpa in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, he raised 8 kids. Maybe he was tired of them.
Probably so. My my
And,
my mom came from a family of 8 kids, and my dad was one of 20 kids in his family with no twins. And yeah, I think after a while, the parents, they expect the children to raise the younger children, and
yeah,
they're kind of done.
yeah, yeah. I can remember my grandpa drove a Model T Ford all the time, and he'd go to town, and he always brought him back a little sack of candy. Well, of course, we'd meet him at the gate. He'd give each one of us a little piece of candy.
Oh, really?
Wouldn't even pat us on the head, you know. But that's, and we just didn't have much to do with him, you know. It wasn't, he wasn't like the grandpa I was anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't bad now.
Sure. So
And
when you were growing up, you mentioned horseback riding. Tell me about your love for horses and horseback
okay,
riding.
I was born in Torrance, California, in a in a tent, in an oil field tent. One that my mother did tell me it had wood floors, so I guess that was something special. But anyway, why my dad's working in the oil fields out there at the time. Every time he got broke there in LaFleur County, he went to California and worked in the oil fields, made enough money to come home and make a crop on.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, it was Dust Bowl days and depression, and things didn't go off too good. Anyway, when I was born, they named me William Norman Parker, and they announced it there. My mother told me this story. She said, "Your daddy just stepped up, said, this boy's name is Bill. He's born a cowboy, he'll be a cowboy, and he'll die a cowboy." And that just about covers me right there.
So your family, when you were growing up, did you guys farm? What was your family's business or livelihood?
Dad was a farmer. He was a farmer, he was a horse trader, and he was a cowboy. He liked to trade horses. Nothing suited him better. And we didn't have anything. My mother got an allotment, Indian allotment, out around Elmore City,
Mm-hmm.
160 acres, I think. And during the Depression, just before the Depression, Dad mortgaged the place, bought a bunch of Jersey cow or Holstein cows to sell milk and stuff out of it, and butter and cream. Why, they were selling good at that time. Depression come along and nobody bought anything,
Mm.
so we lost the place. The house burnt down, and we moved back to LaFleur County then, and back to my grandpa's place that had what we call red houses, or they were sharecropper houses. People put in crops and he got part of it. Anyway, we moved into one of them, and that's where I started going to school at Folsom.
Okay.
That was one named after him. One of my aunts was a school teacher there. She gave me a whooping about every other day. No, it wasn't that bad. But anyway, she tried to teach me.
Yeah.
I didn't want to go to school, never did. Anyway, I finally got through. Well, that's consolidated Folsom with a little town of Melton, which had a post office, two stores. I think that was about all there. Might have been a blacksmith shop.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, why, then they consolidated it with McCurtain. So I had to go to McCurtain School. And I guess my freshman year then, two school buses come by the house because we'd moved back to Grandpa's place then. And anyway, why the Pecosi bus come back a week later than the McCurtain bus, so I went to Pecosi School. And then when I met my girlfriend going to school in McCurtain, why I went back to McCurtain School.
Okay. So I do. I want to get into your girlfriend Colleen that would become your wife here in a minute, but I've got some more questions, and Tony has some that I want to read to you. So, when you were growing up during the Depression, how did that affect your family? I mean, was it something that was pretty noticeable, or I mean, did it affect you guys?
Yeah, I'm sure it did to
Yeah.
them. It didn't affect us kids much, but yeah, we didn't have nothing.
Hmm.
No extra money, whatever. We did have enough hogs, things like that. We had meat, and we had enough gardens that we had plenty to eat. My mother canned everything that was cannable.
Yeah.
We had a big storm cellar that we kept it in, and so we didn't none of us ever go hungry. We run out of meat before we'd kill hogs again, but anytime we did, why, after I got to be 10 or 12 years old, we all we had 22 single axle rifles. And my dad had given me one shell and send me to the woods to bring back a squirrel.
Hmm.
So I got to be a good shot. You just take one bullet. And it wasn't quite that bad, but it was nearly.
Well, you just obviously he didn't want you to go out, shooting cans or anything like that. Those
No,
bullets were there were
no,
for a reason. So
we never did practice any.
yeah.
What we shot at was something we had to have.
Yeah. Um,
Shells wasn't, just didn't have them.
mhm. Uh, Now, did you or your family do anything with the CCC, which was the Civilian Conservation Corps? Back then they were doing a lot of projects around Oklahoma.
No,
Did you have any involvement with that at all?
No, we didn't have it. Wasn't any of us old enough at the
Uh,
time to go. I had a lot of friends who went to CC,
okay.
and I think Dad finally got a job. He tried to get a job working on the roads or something in that program that they had. They finally told him if he'd get a truck and haul the workers, why they'd give him a job. So he bought an old ton-and-a-half truck to haul workers on.
Hmm.
He worked a little while that way.
Hmm. So when you were growing up, compared to today, what would you have done growing up that would shock people today? Like, the sorts of things that you would do as a kid that parents today would, you know, probably freak out about. I mean, what were some things you would do that were not a big deal, but just part of growing up?
I guess the biggest thing that people would notice now was when our parents told us something, we mind them.
Yeah.
When Dad gave me two good whoopings in my life, just two, and he didn't have to do it no more.
Uh,
When he pointed his finger at me, I knew whatever I was doing, I didn't do it no more. And we minded our parents, done what they wanted us to do. And me and my dad was, well, he is my dad, but we were friends.
hmm.
We, he made a cowboy out of me. When I was little, why, he set me up on the front of his saddle, took me nearly everywhere he went. If he went to see about the cows, well, I went with him. And all through my life, then, why, Dad taught me everything there was to know about a horse, how to trade, and about the cows. And that was one of my jobs. My oldest brother, he rode some, but he didn't like a horse. In fact, I heard him tell one time, he said, I don't like a horse, and I don't like nobody that does. So anyway, I guess that left me and my dad both out. But I was a cowboy. When I was all 12, somewhere through there, I started breaking horses for neighbors that raised 2-year-old horses, let them grow out all winter. Some of them would be pretty thin and weak, but they wanted them broke. So I'd break horses for them and was supposed to get $10 a horse. I never did get any money. They didn't have any,
Mm.
but I rode lots of horses. When cattle was all outside range, and when I got big enough to throw a rope, and a neighbor of mine that was pretty good with the rope, he didn't, when he met me, he didn't know a horse from a cow, but didn't take me long to teach him. And he got pretty good at the rope. Well, he would rope them and I'd ride them.
Mm.
So I got to riding cattle pretty good. And then when I was about 15, he was a year older. He could drive. His his daddy run a little store at Latham, Oklahoma, just a wide place in the road. And he had a ton-and-a-half truck, so he'd let us take that 100-ton-and-a-half truck, go to rodeos with him driving. We get there, well, nobody had any money to pay entry fees, so the stock contractors pay us $1 a head to ride. I'd ride a bull, I'd ride a horse, make $2 on Friday night. Saturday night, I'd make $2 more. And if they had one Sunday, well, I'd make $2 more. I was getting rich.
Why did they only let you ride twice a night? I mean, was there a reason? I mean, you said one bull and one horse, but why couldn't you have done more than that? Did you want to, or is it just too rough?
No, that's all we'd have chance to.
Okay.
And there was few of us like me. Why every weekend, why he would sign us up. Now some of them would try to enter, and he'd say, "No, I can't use you."
Mm.
But ones like Lee and this other friend of mine, a fellow named Watson, Leon Watson, why he just automatically put us down when we was there. He liked what we done.
Okay. So what did you have what was the name of your favorite horse growing up? Did you have a favorite?
Favorite horse?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say I did in a way. My dad didn't keep a horse long enough, hardly. Now, he kept one for himself pretty well, but he traded lots of them, and I had to ride whatever he had traded for, and try to have it sold by. There was a big horse sale in Fort Smith, Arkansas, every Wednesday night. I think every Wednesday. It could have been every other, but I think it was every Wednesday. He wanted the horse traded off so he could go buy another one on Wednesday night. They was he didn't have money enough to buy two, so one of my jobs was to ride them horses around over the country where people could see them to get them sold or traded off. We traded lots of them for cattle. Uh, he always told me, said, if you can trade one for a good cow, why, you can't lose because she'll have a calf or two.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, why, he let me trade horses when I was real young. And then I broke horses for different farmers over the country and got $10 a head, but they never did have no money, so I never did get paid much for it. But I had one feller that was a friend of Dad's, had better horses than most of them. He bred his mares to remount studs that the government put out to farmers out of thoroughbred horses, you know. He bred his mares to them, so he had a little better horses. I broke horses for him for $10 a head, and every fall when I'd take them back, why, he'd tell me, well, I haven't got the money right now, but I'll pay you this fall. And he would.
Mm-hmm.
But he'd try to sell me the horse for $30 or 40 for $40 what he wanted all the time. Horses was worth $25 to $30 a head. Anyway, why, one time, why, I broke one for him. It was ex, a really nice horse, better than most of them. And when I got ready to leave, why, take him home, my dad told me, said, when he tells you that he hadn't got the money, why, I want you to buy him. And I said, all right. He said, he'll ask you $40 for him. He gave me $30, and I went, took the horse home. Sure enough, got over there, why, this fellow's name was Simpson, Sam Simpson. Sam said, I haven't got the money right now, but I'll pay you this fall. Said, why don't you buy him? And I said, well, what do you want for him? He said, I want $40. And Dad had told me what to say. I said, okay, Sam, I'm going to buy him. I give him the $30. And he looked at it and he said, no, I said 40. I said, that's what I paid you. Here's $30 and you owe me 10. That makes $40. Dad told me, said he'll do a war dance. jump up and down. And that's what he done. And when he got done, he said, Guy Parker told you to do this. I got on the horse and rode him off, said thank you.
So he
And
accepted that, though, huh?
he didn't have to, I had him already saddled and
Oh, wow.
just rode off and left him. But that's the way that horse deal with. But I was always breaking a horse for somebody.
Yeah.
And some good and some bad. Most of them were run out all winter, though. They wasn't real stout or hard to do anything with. But that's the way I grew up being a cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to go to the mountains then to look at our cattle. And that's where the love story started.
Well, go ahead. I'm just going to start asking you about that. So tell me about how
Well,
you met your wife.
we were in the fall, we were picking cotton for the second picking. And I was way back on my row. I couldn't pick cotton. I didn't want to pick cotton. Anyway, Dad come back and told me, he said, you're not doing very good. I thought he's going to eat me out good, but he didn't. He said, you go home and get your horse and go see about the cows. We kept them back in the mountains about 10 miles from where we lived during the summer, brought them home every winter. Anyway, when I got up there, he told me, he said, some cows we hadn't seen, you be sure you see them before you come back. My mother heard this and she said, Bill, you come back before dark if you don't see a cow. Her word was over his. So I went back in the mountains to see about the cows, found them all pretty quick, found some big grapevines with big blue grapes on it, ate all them I could stand, and come out of the mountains on the other side than the way I'd went in, come down this road, and come back to the one that I should be on, and this girl was standing at the mailbox getting her mail. I rode up and talked to her, me a horseback, never got off. And we talked for 45 minutes or an hour. I'd heard of Pretty Girls of Rosedale, and she was one of them. Anyway, finally she said, I've got to go to the house because they'll be calling me. And she went. I spent the rest of that summer, I couldn't get her off my mind.
Yeah.
Every time I went to see about the cows, and I went more often, we'd go and just for that reason.
You checked the cows a lot, didn't
Yeah.
you?
Anyway, I'd come back by the mailbox, but she never was there. And I was too bashful to go up to the house, ask them for a drink of water. Anyway, that fall then, little schoolhouses was having pie suppers for buy things for Christmas. And I told my mother I was going to Rosedale to the school to pie supper, and she had to iron me some clothes to go. Wouldn't let me go like I was. And anyway, she asked me about money, and I didn't have any. She said, get some off your daddy because you got to have money to go to pie supper. Well, that was like getting it out of the government. Dad didn't have no money either, but anyway, anytime I saddled a horse, Dad had come down to see what direction I was going. I guess so. If I got lost, he'd know how to hunt me. But anyway, he asked me if I had any money, and I said no. He fumbled around in his pocket and found a quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Give me that quarter, and I went on to the pie supper. Asked the girls then over there what her pie was because I knew her name. They showed me. Pies was bringing 10 and 15 cents apiece. Her pie come up for sale. I had to give that whole quarter for it. Best quarter I ever spent in my life. And when the pie supper was over, why, we had to eat pie together. It was chocolate. Best chocolate pie ever made. Anyway, I ate pie with them. And then when we got done, why, all the country girls walked down the road by the Seth. I got on my horse and rode up beside of her, stepped off just like I was going to tie a calf, got her by the hand, and I had her 73 years after.
She
No,
she didn't want you to rope her, did she? She's like, I'll get on the horse with you. Just don't rope me.
no two people had a better life than me and her
Well,
had.
that's congratulations. That's a great love story. And so you said that she just passed away a few years ago. Is that right?
3 years ago.
And you said you were married for 73
Yeah,
years. My goodness. Wow. And how many children did you guys have?
we had two. Had one little girl in Wichita, Kansas. I was working up there at the time. She just lived 2 days.
Oh,
And after she died, we wasn't satisfied in Kansas. We went to Oregon and I worked out there. Finally come back to, well, that was in about 1950. I got a call to the Korean War. I had to come back to Tulsa to take a physical and I was late. Come back here and I never did have to go to the war. So I went back to working and we finally ended up then in Tulsa
hmm.
and had our boy then, one boy,
So this was after World War II that you
after
had your
World War
son.
II.
Okay.
That was in 1952.
Okay.
We had him, and after that, well, she told me, said, well, we got to settle someplace to raise this boy, and that's, we stayed here.
Hmm.
And I've been here ever since. I bought my house on the GI Bill, $58 a month for 30 years. I paid for it. It's mine. I still live there.
You still live there.
I
That's
still live
great.
there. It hadn't fell in yet.
um, so let's see. So Tony was asking if we can get a picture of your wife, and you showed me some pictures of her in the car. Do you happen to have those with you here? I could put them up on the screen just so we can kind of
Yeah.
see how pretty of a girl she really was and everything. What date did you guys get married, Bill?
What?
What was the date that you got married?
Uh, December the 12th,
December 12th. Okay.
1945.
45. So you waited until you got back before you got married.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. One night. There's another in there too somewhere.
Oh, yeah. Those are great.
That's the way they go. My order to
All right. So let's see here. I'll put the one in front of the camera here.
that's the one at the mailbox.
That's it. Yeah. So that's when she was about 15. Is that what you were saying? She about 15 in this picture, Bill? How old was she there?
She was 15 and 3/4 when I married her. She's probably 16 in this
That one.
picture.
And then this is a bigger, better picture here.
She was 20 there when I got back from my army. That's what she looked like.
And then this is her. What was this? What about what year is this?
Well, that's my boy's picture up there, and so he'd been in about out of high school. I don't know exactly, but she was middle aged anyway.
Yeah. She looked pretty happy.
Yeah, she was a happy woman.
So let's see. Yeah, got the picture. So, well, okay. So tell me about where were you at when you heard about Pearl Harbor, and what did you think about that?
Well, I was going to see her. That happened on a Sunday morning. I was horseback going down this country road, and a girl come out from a house and stopped me and said they burned Pearl Harbor last night. Well, we didn't have radios, but they happened to have one. And I said, well, where's Pearl Harbor? Well, she didn't know, but she said, we're in war. Well, it really didn't make much difference to me at that time. But I didn't know at all what it was going to lead to. Anyway,
Yeah.
well,
So when did you actually? Now, did you enlist or were you drafted?
no, I did not enlist.
You did not. Yeah.
No, I wasn't like one of them fellows that said at 17 I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to go at all.
Mm-hmm.
I had a good deal where I was going. I had a good horse. I had a good saddle. I had lots of country to rope in. I had the best looking girlfriend in the country. I couldn't have wanted any more.
I don't blame you. I would have wanted to do the same thing. That sounds like a great life.
It was a great life.
Yeah.
No, I had teenage years. I had a good life.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't restricted from going any place. There was places over the country my dad and mother told me not to go, which I did go sometimes.
Of course, when you're young, you got to explore,
I
right?
had to see what was there. But as a whole, I've done what they wanted me to do.
It sounds like you had some great parents, honestly.
I did. I had good parents.
Yeah.
And we had a little excitement every Saturday night. Somebody had to have a fight. But they didn't mean anything because next Friday and Saturday night we'd be friends.
Uh huh.
But I had plenty of them,
Yeah.
and I didn't think anybody could whoop me, but once in a while they could.
So when did you actually enter the army? When did you ship off to basic training and
Well,
everything?
when school was out in June, I already had a call to the Army, and Dad went down to the courthouse and got it deferred for a month so I could finish school. And school was out then. My mother sent me to California. My brother was out there working. I had an aunt and uncle out there that was over Douglas Aircraft, and he'd put my brother to work at 16. I found out how they'd done that too. Uh, Before he was born, why, they had one boy that they lost at 2 years old, and they used his birth certificate to put my brother to work out at Douglas Aircraft,
Mm.
made him 18.
Mm-hmm.
And they sent me out there to see him. I think they had in mind that he had put me to work and I wouldn't have to go to the Army. But that didn't happen. It wasn't even mentioned, and I didn't mention it either. Anyway, while I was there, I had another uncle that I just saw this one time, married to my aunt, he was a colonel in the Army. And during the day, why, my brother was working and his wife was working or playing golf or something. I think golf most of the time. But anyway, why, he told me, he said, have you ever seen Los Angeles? And I said, no. We were right close to the streetcars. He said, let's get on a streetcar and go to Los Angeles. And we did. And then we sat down on a bench somewhere, and he got to telling me about the Army, him being a colonel and all, and I'm going to have to go. He told me, he said, don't make any difference what an officer says to you. You either say yes, sir, or no, sir. Don't say nothing else. He don't want no more than that. I said, okay. And he taught me how to treat officers and what to do and to not get in trouble, you know. And for about 3 days, we went to Los Angeles. Most of it was talking. We did go to a striptease show one day. I will never forget that. But anyway, why, I never saw him after that. While I was in Germany, or France one, he come by the division, they said, hunting me, but I was on patrol and I didn't get to see him. And anyway, why, he died on the operating table. I never did find out exactly why, but I never did get to see him again. But he taught me a lot about the Army in 3 days.
Wow.
So when I got down to, well, I got my call to go to the Army. I had to go to, we live 11 miles from Shady Point. I don't remember exactly how I got down there, but I caught a bus full of them, just like me, going to McAllister. I think they put us on a train there, and we went to Fort Sill.
Okay.
Fort Sill, then, why, they sent me to Camp Walters, Texas, for the infantry. When I got to infantry, why, the first thing they done, might have not been the first thing, they checked us all in and give us clothes and stuff, you know. Next thing, though, they took us to the rifle range, see if we could shoot. Well, I'd been shooting all my life.
Sure.
Shooting left-handed. Anyway, they handed me the M1 rifle with a clip, and he showed me how to work it all. Had me feel of it and get it into my shoulder. Then he told this fellow, said, put up a dummy out there. They did. He said, shoot that dummy in the heart. And I said, I don't know where his heart is. They said, well, it's the same place yours is. So I took the place I thought was his heart, and I shot his clip for him. You could put every shell I shot in a cup.
Really?
With that M1 rifle, first time I ever picked it up. He looked at it and he said, now that's good shooting. And he told that fellow, said, put up another one. Hand me another clip. And he said, now shoot him in the heart again. I put it up to my left shoulder and he said, no, put it on your right shoulder. I said, no, I shoot left-handed. He said, you don't in the Army.
Oh.
You shoot right-handed in the Army.
Why is that?
I don't know. Because these they showed the shells out in your face,
Oh,
shooting
gotcha.
left-handed. Anyway, he stuck up another dummy, and I shot at it right-handed, and you took an area about the size of that drum over there to cover where I'd shot. And he kind of laughed, told that fellow, said, put up another one, handed me another clip, and said, now shoot it again. And I stuck it up to my right shoulder and started. He said, no, wait a minute now. Said, you're closing the wrong eye.
Oh,
So I opened that other eye then and shot it pretty good shell. Not as good as I shot left-handed, but I got the marksman badge for shooting.
really?
Started off. But that's the way I done with the M1 rifle.
So whenever you got your papers to be drafted after you just said you had such a great life, how did how did you react when you found out you were getting drafted?
I didn't want to go.
Yeah,
No, I didn't want to go.
yeah.
I would have went and hid if I thought I could got away with it. I wasn't. I didn't know nothing about being patriotic.
Hmm.
I was just living in a free country and had a pretty free life.
Yeah.
Oh, I'd done a few things that ought not have been done. I broke. I broke my wife's brother out of jail one time, which ought not to. But that's another story. Yes, he was 2 years older than she was. He got to drinking chopped beer. That was a beer that was left over after they made whiskey. You could go over them mountains and find them whiskey places anywhere you want to. So he kind of got stuck on them, and when he had a little Indian blood too, and he liked to fight, so he got in trouble nearly everywhere he went. I went to this town of Bekoshi, and about the first thing when I got there, why they told me said he was in jail, and I asked where the jail was, and it was just a little square, square cement block deal with a metal tin roof on it, and no a door, no windows or nothing. And I rode up beside of it and hollered in, about held me up with the top, on it. Asked him if he was in there, and he was. He said, "Get me out of here." And I said, well, I don't know how to get you out. But I was leaning over in it, and when I was leaning on it, and I just lifted up the top. The thing wasn't fastened down. It was just sitting on top of them cement blocks. And another boy that was with me come along horseback. I told him, I said, come over here and let's raise this top up. We did. Let him crawl out. Got him out of jail. Got his horse and took him outside of town, and he wanted to come back. And I said, no, you go on home.
Uh-huh.
Run him out of town. But anyway, we didn't get arrested over that. Another time during that same town, I didn't know, and I don't remember it, but I went to a decoration at a graveyard that my wife's people were in, and this fellow I was talking to said, you remember us riding into Bekoshi a horseback? And I said, well, I done that nearly every Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
Now he said, this is one you was riding a big gray horse called Old Dick. And I said, well, I know about him. He said this little police officer run out in front of us and stopped right in front of him, pointed his finger at you and said, "You boys come into this town, you're speeding." Said you come into town in a trot, and said you looked at him and told him, said you better get your back up on that sidewalk or I'll run this gray horse right over the top of you. And he crawled up on the sidewalk. I don't know for sure whether that happened or not, but he said it did. Anyway, another story about the gray horse. Why, I could ride him in this building, anything. Anyway, I headed him, he'd go. Coming down this country road, doing just fine, and all at once he just balked, stopped, throwed them ears up and looked, and he might have even snorted. And I looked, I couldn't see anything bothering him, but I wanted to know what it was before I made him go on. I kept looking, and there was a crawdad crawling across the road. He'd seen that thing with his tail up, and he just stopped. I,
Really?
I didn't make him go. I let him go, crawdad go on across the road. But that's the kind of life I had.
So whenever you finished up your training stateside, you said in your biography that you always kind of knew that you were going to be heading for the invasion.
Yeah.
What sort of was it? Just because of the training that they were putting you through? What was your training like?
Well, it was mostly getting us in shape, but we learned to shoot the M1 rifles, the bazookas, Bangalore torpedoes, throw hand grenades, crawl under bellies on the war, under war. We done we done marching and getting in shape,
Hmm.
but we done all of this other stuff. We learned how to handle a grenade. One time, while the sergeant was showing us all about the grenades and how to pull the pin, and he explained it to us that if we ever pulled a pin and happened to drop it, why fall on it so it wouldn't hurt, wouldn't kill any of them other soldiers. And about that time, he pulled a pin and fumbling around with it, he dropped it. We was all sitting on a hill, and we like to cripple each other getting over the top of that hill. Nobody fell on his grenade.
Wow. So um, whenever you finished your training, then um, when did you actually head overseas, and how did you go overseas? Was it on a troop ship?
Well, let's see. I left home. We left it our 17 weeks in just before Christmas of 44, 1944. We had a 7-day leave on the way, send us to New York. Anyway, why I went home for that 7 days. My wife come from, which was my girlfriend. She come home from Tulsa, stayed home that 7 days, and of course I didn't know nothing about the army then much. And if I knew then what I know now, I'd have stayed home for Christmas. They wasn't going to do nothing but send me on a boat anyway. I mean, a ship.
Hmm.
The Navy men taught me that it wasn't a boat, it was a ship. Anyway, why she come home from Tulsa to be with me one till I went back. We both got on a bus and went through McAllister. She come on come on back to Tulsa, and I got on a troop train at McAllister. That was the loneliest, saddest day of my life ever
Mm,
when she went off in that bus and I went the other way to New York City.
hmm. So when you were at New York City, so you went from there over to England. Is that correct?
Yeah,
And so were you at Camp Miles Standish before you went over to England?
no, I was at camp.
Is it the one where they had all the guys that would kind of all the GIs would come there before they would?
Yeah,
It
and
does.
they were sent in different directions. Yeah,
Okay.
I can see the sign right now, but I can't tell you what it
Yeah, I'm
was.
trying to. Maybe I got the name wrong because I'd have seen. I mean, is it Camp Crowder?
No,
No. Okay. I don't
no.
know. It doesn't matter.
Well, anyway, why that's where they sent us out for more training,
Oh, okay.
and getting us ready. I was there on New Year's night of, of 44, I guess it'd be New Year's for 45. I went down to New York and seen it, whatever they dropped
Oh, the
the
ball.
old year.
Uh huh.
Yeah, I never seen such a crowd in my life.
Mm.
You had to, you had to go with the crowd. You didn't have, you couldn't turn around and go the other way.
Hmm.
But anyway, that's the way I started out.
Sure.
Then and they kept us there during Christmas. We were still in New York. Camp Shanks, that's where we was at.
Okay.
Camp Shanks, New York. Anyway, Christmas come along and had an officer there over us. I guess wanted to go home, but he got us out on Christmas Day and going to give us calisthenics. And it had been snowing and it was ice and miserable day, but he had us outside. I guess we wasn't doing very good to suit him because he said stopped us, and he said one time when he was little he had a bunch of wooden soldiers and said he lost them, and he was crying about it, and he said his mother told him, said one of these days you'll find them. And he looked at us and he said, by God, I found them.
Really.
I guess we wasn't doing to suit him. But anyway, that's the way we spent Christmas.
Yeah.
Then we began training then for, we knew for France then,
Hmm.
and everything we done. I don't know exactly how long we was there, but not very long. They sent us to England. We went on to Queen Elizabeth,
Hmm.
big a big ship, not a boat, ship, big ship. Anyway, most of the time on it, I was on KP, but I was mostly sick. I wasn't no sailor.
Hmm.
Never
So are you seasick?
seasick.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. I could just think about it and get seasick.
Hmm.
So most of the time I was up there laying in the top bunk.
Oh, wow. That's miserable to be
Yeah,
seasick.
yeah. Anyway, why we finally got to England after 14, 15 days. I've forgotten that exactly. Somewhere over there, the boat began to zigzag, and they said there was something following us. I didn't know, but what it was, it didn't catch us, I guess. But we got on to, we got off. They took us off of it in Ireland. and then put us on another ship to England.
Mm-hmm.
Got in there after dark, and then they began training us for the invasion.
Okay.
We'd go get on landing crafts and come back to shore, and do a little imitation fighting or crawling on our bellies under the water, and machine guns shooting over our heads, and getting ready for the invasion.
Okay. So I think you said in your biography that uh, they put you aboard a ship the day before, and you were on the ship like 24 hours, right, before you guys took off across the channel. What was it like in that 24 hours before you guys actually, left port to go across seas? I understand the weather was not very good.
Weather was real bad. They put the invasion off. It's supposed to come off on the 6th, but they put it off on the 5th, I mean,
Okay.
and they put it off to the 6th. I've read afterwards that Eisenhower seen that there was going to be a break in the weather, and he knew that all of the planning they had done, that Germans would find out what we'd done in that length of time. So when the weather got pretty good there for the 5th, or for the 6th, he said, let's go with it.
Mm-hmm.
And we were already on these ships. And I think I just stayed one night on them. Next morning, they got us up real early, fed us beans for breakfast. Now, I've heard that some of them say they had a good breakfast, and I read that somewhere, and it made